Hi friends, Shayla here. So let's talk about the things that I read this last week. So in the last week, I actually didn't read a single volume of manga, which is really rare for me. I usually read at least, usually 1 to 3 in a week, but I think just all the binging of the previous week with the Fall into Manga Love Readathon led me to, I just needed to immerse myself in the books. I had a lot of arcs I wanted to get to, and I was really excited about all of them, so I really wanted to jump into those. So I think that's what led to that. But I did watch a little bit of anime, so I'm going to talk about that briefly. So I did watch the first episode of Yashihime, which is the sequel to Inuyasha. It's a canon sequel series. I do believe the mangaka is involved in the story at least, but not in the art at all. So it's one of those things where I guess my expectations going into this first episode were a little bit different, because this first episode genuinely felt like an episode of Inuyasha rather than this new show with new characters. Because we spent our time with Inuyasha and Kagome and Moroku, Sango, Shippo was there, Kohaku was there, like all the people that are there at the end of Inuyasha are all there in this first episode, including some that I didn't necessarily expect to see, so we'll put it that way. Basically, what this episode ended up doing is introducing us to kind of our big bad for the new series is what it seems. So that's kind of the plan there. So technically in Yashihime, we are following the progeny of Sesshomaru and Inuyasha and their partners. I'm not going to say who they're partnered with due to spoilers, but most people probably know at this point, but I'm still going to be cautious in case you're not familiar with the series. We do get to see the progeny of other characters that were involved in the original Inuyasha series, as well as, you know, people we don't know for sure. But yeah, so I enjoyed the first episode, but it really felt like an episode of Inuyasha, not an episode of this new series where we're going to be following these 3 teenagers on this journey. So I wanted more of that connection, because the title of the episode was Inuyasha Since Then. So I thought this was going to be just kind of a quick-paced sum up of what happened between the end of Inuyasha and the start of Yashihime, because there's some story to fill in there, but I think they're going to take a couple of episodes to do that, so my expectations were a little bit skewed on that one, but that's all I'm going to say. I was going to do a dedicated video, I had recorded one, but I didn't like how it turned out, so that's kind of my brief sum of thoughts. Steve and I are still going to continue to watch it at this point. I did also watch the next episode in Haikyuu, because we're finally back to season 4. We got a new episode. It was glorious. I loved it so much. I really love this arc that we're currently in the anime. I really, we're getting close to the end of the series at this point, and I really just loved it. Because after this season, because I'm pretty sure I know how this season will end, unless they decide to really drag it out. That would be crazy, though. Anyways, so by the end of this season, then we're into kind of the final arc of the story, and I'm sure that will all be contained within a 5th season. So there's that. I still love it, and we got to spend some more time with the Mia twins. I did rewatch episode 13 and then went straight into 14 just kind of together, because they do, story-wise, it's better to watch them together. So I would recommend doing that if you haven't. And yes, so I really enjoyed rewatching episode 13 and watching episode 14. Now that I've rambled on about anime, let's dive into the books that I read. So I'm going to start with the digital ones that I've read. So like my e-arcs that I don't have physical copies of, because there's a couple that I technically read on ebook, but I've since received physical copies from the publisher, and I'll talk about those when we get to the physical. But like I have a couple of audiobooks and a couple of arcs that I want to talk to you guys about. So let's talk about the 2 audiobooks, because they do go together. Are you 2 really going to start fighting right now? Light song. Light song. Don't you bother him. My sassy cats, I'm sorry. If it gets noisy, it's because one's going after the other one and I can't stop them. Yeah, don't you do it. Don't you do it. You put that paw back where it belongs, please. So anyways, diving in. So I read the next 2 books in the Victorian Rebels series. I'm reading these through Audible Escape before it goes away. And I've now read all of them. They're available through Audible Escape. So I'll be switching to some other things now that I'm trying to finish up before Audible Escape goes away. So we have the Scott Betts, his wife, and the Duke with the dragon tattoo. The Scott Betts, his wife, follows one of the Mackenzie brothers. And then the Duke with the dragon tattoo follows someone that we thought since book 1 was dead, but they weren't dead. And honestly, of the 2, I did prefer the Duke with the dragon tattoo. Both, honestly, all of the Victorian Rebels series kind of have almost like a Beauty and the Beast element to them, because they're these big, brutish men. They're kind of violent. They don't fit well in society. I mean, they can make themselves fit in society, but naturally who they are doesn't fit well in society, because they all have shared experiences and some things like that. Like the Mackenzie brothers, they all had a really crappy father, where there's another group that all spent time in prison together. And so anyways, I'm trying to be really super vague, but I really loved the childhood friends to lovers with the pirate twist of the Duke with the dragon tattoo. I really loved how that played out. Lorelai was a really interesting character to me because she suffered abuse at the hands of her brother and her father for many years. And so how she looks at the world and how she approaches things is very different. And that throws the Rook, the main character in the Duke with the dragon tattoo. That's what he goes by. And it's really fantastic. I really loved both of these. I did like the Scott Betts, his wife, a little bit less. There wasn't enough groveling in that one. I needed a little bit more. So I gave the Scott Betts, his wife, 4 stars. That one was fun because it had kind of the Scotsman and an American approach, and it was really lovely and well done, but like I said, needed more groveling, so 4 stars. And then the Duke with the dragon tattoo, I gave 4.5 stars. It wasn't quite perfect, and to this day, my favorite Victorian Rebels is still the Hunter, and I think that's a pretty unpopular opinion, but I still have really enjoyed the series, and I'm really looking forward to the next book. I'll probably get to that in November, just because I'm trying to get through all the Audible Escape ones first. All right, so the rest are e-arcs. So the first one is The Woman I Was Before. This is kind of a domestic suspense, I think is the easiest way to kind of put it. There's some suspense elements to this, but it's not, I can't call it a thriller. I wasn't like, any other time I've tried a thriller, like my anxiety has been triggered, but this one I didn't, which is why I think it's more like a domestic suspense kind of a situation. And we've got this neighborhood of people that are all envious of each other and how they all get kind of caught up in a murder mystery. I think that's the easiest way to describe this without spoiling anything. This can be very empowering to women. There is some domestic abuse at home stuff kind of going on, so it can be triggering. But I did find this to be a pretty good book. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. Originally, I think I gave it a 4, but the longer I think on it, the more I'm like, it's really like a 3.5. It's not bad. And if it sounds interesting to you, I definitely would recommend picking it up, but it's not the best thing you'll ever read, in my personal opinion. Next, Scandal and the Runaway Bride. So this is a trope where the bride leaves the groom at the altar, but they're a big family with money. And so the brother of the groom, who's kind of in charge of the PR for the whole family, is sent to kind of like deal with her and make her still marry the brother in the future. But of course, they end up kind of whisked away to, a quiet family estate. And so there's forced proximity and things go from there. Obviously, they fall in love and then they have to come back and deal with the ramifications with both families, because both families come from money. One was kind of helping the other because of other things. And it's about them really discovering what they want out of life and going for what they want in life. There was never like cheating going on. Like things were clearly ended by her with the original groom before there's ever any like, what's the word I'm looking for? Before there's any like connection between our couple. So I think it was handled really well, and the whole scandal aspect of it was kind of fun. And, you know, it has some really fun tropes. So if it sounds interesting to you, it's worth a pickup. And I gave this one 4 stars. Next, we have After Hours Redemption. This one was, we're dealing with a music executive who just signed a new really popular artist from YouTube, has great voice compared to Whitney Houston. Like, it was a huge find for their small label based out of Georgia. And from there, what happens is he has to find the right person to write the music for this new artist. And the only person that can do this the way that the artist wants it done is a woman that he previously dated and betrayed, because she was signed to his dad's label and he didn't stand up for her. And so it was kind of the ultimate betrayal. And it was really, I really liked the second chance element to this, because he definitely had to do some groveling. I wish there had been a little more, but I think I just need more grovel. And I'll talk more about that later. And it's one of those things where I really honestly think that if you're interested, this one's definitely worth it. I really enjoyed both of our characters, and I like the character growth and arcs that they both go through, because they both have to grow and change for them to truly be able to be together, and I really enjoyed that. So, solid 4 stars. If you're interested in it at all, I highly recommend it. This was a new to me author, and I really enjoyed the writing. All right, now we have The Last Christmas Cowboy by, I believe it's Maisie Yates. I don't remember the author right off the top of my head. I read this kind of in the middle of the night when I couldn't sleep, so. Anyways, with this one, it's a Christmas romance that is, again, a childhood friends to lovers, but it has an age gap element to it where he is a good, like, 10 years older than her. But he doesn't even start to, like, have feelings for her until she's, like, 19, but nothing happens till I think she's 23. And it was all kind of a point where they were both ready for it. And I think it was handled really well. It's all wrapped up in a pretty Christmas bow, but it does tell a deeper story. This isn't going to necessarily be a fluffy Christmas story. It has some hard-hitting elements to it. There's a big emphasis on grief with this one, and grief around the holidays. So if that's triggering for you, this might not be the book for you. But I do think it's a beautiful read. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. There were some things that weren't necessarily my favorite, but I can understand why the author made those choices, which is why I ended up with a 3.5. So again, if this sounds interesting to you at all, I highly recommend checking it out. I do really enjoy both of our characters and the family that surrounds them. I might look up other books in the series just because some of the elements that were necessarily like not my favorite were just strictly about these two characters. I don't think I would necessarily run into those in the other books in the series. So, because we're, you know, we have other couplings around us, so we know we're in a series kind of a situation. All right. And last but not least, for the digital reads, I finally read Crazy Stupid Bromance, and I loved the snot out of this. So we have a hero who was a hacker, was doing very illegal things, got arrested, spent time, didn't really spend time, a lot of time in jail at least. He spent some time in jail, got out, cleaned up his life, and, you know, due to events in the previous book, we got to know him, and he is part of the friend group of the Bromance book club. And throughout the course of the novel, obviously, he's brought into it. And the person that he's paired with is someone that we meet in the previous book, and her name is Alexis. Alexis is a victim of the abuse and the Me Too part of Undercover Bromance. That's all I'm going to say because I don't want to spoil too much. And it's been about 1.5 years since the events of that by the time Crazy Stupid Bromance starts. So we've spent a lot of time, and they have become best friends. They both have feelings for one another, but they're afraid to like initiate that next step. And so they just kind of live in their feelings, but maintain this beautiful friendship. And it's been really great. But they're at a point now where they both feel ready to take that step, but they both hesitate and have fears. And the discussion that they have in getting together, I think, is pretty realistic for people who become such good friends and they fear losing the friendship by being together. And I really loved the discussion around all of that. There are bigger things at play here, obviously, and it's really well done. And I really loved so much of this. I do wish there's groveling going on back and forth through like the last third of this book, I would say, where they both make mistakes and say stupid things, and they kind of come and grovel to one another and make apologies and stuff. And the way they work through it is really nice to see on page, because usually we only see like one big blowout and then like the rectification of that in these kinds of books. And I love how grand gesture time was handled in this particular one. I think it fits this couple so well. I'm not going to say much more than that because I don't want to spoil it for you. But I absolutely love Noah and Alexis. I loved this book. 5 stars. Like, already off to such a good start in October. I really, really, really loved this. All right, so let's talk about this groveling thing a little bit with Any Rogue Will Do by Bethany Bennett. And in this book, we have a man who, when he was young and new to the ton of London, he got drunk and said something about somebody that he had been courting that was very unkind and very untrue. Because of this, it caused a scandal with her in her first season in London, and there's a huge blow up, and she leaves London because of the scandal and just needs to get away. And she's been nicknamed, I believe it's the Paper Doll Princess, because she's just so plain and there's no substance to her, is kind of what he says. So skip ahead 10 years. She finally comes back to London to find a husband, and there he is. So her name's Charlotte, aka Lottie, and his name is Ethan, and he is a Viscount. And they have obviously different impressions of what happened than what actually happened. And so it's really interesting because Ethan is the king of groveling. He feels so bad about what happened to her, and he wants to do everything in his power to make it right. And so there is a massive amount of groveling, and it is glorious. It's groveling done right. So if you like a good grovel, this is your book. So the thing that Lottie is worried about is her father wants her to marry this very odious man who's got gambling debts. He's kind of a cad, and she doesn't want to marry him. So she has to marry somebody from this season, or she can't, get everything she wants from her father. And so she ends up married to Ethan, and it's great. They kind of save each other from scandal because he was about to announce his engagement to someone, but she ran off and eloped with somebody else who loved her because his heart was closed off and he couldn't love her. But anyways, Lottie breaks down the walls and warms his cold heart. It's just so sweet. I love it so much. I ended up giving this one 5 stars. I'm definitely going to be reading more from Bethany Bennett. I really loved this, and I highly recommend checking out if you like a good groveling hero, because man, the grovel is insane. Next we have The Highland Lair by Amy Jarecki, another 5-star read. And this one we have a heroine who is blind. She's been blind since birth, and one of the only people to meet her outside of her family is the laird of a neighboring clan that is friends with her clan. And this is their romance. And this book doesn't necessarily like glamorize being blind, but Jarecki was very creative in a way to make Emma very independent, and it's really sweet, and I love this so much. And there's an element where she actually like breaks into jail and breaks him out and saves him. And then, so they're whisked off and they're hiding and on the run, and it's fantastic. Like, I really don't want to spoil things about this, but man, I really loved, really, you two, hey, if you're gonna bite each other, get off the cat tree, please. Thank you. You, get down. Get down. Come on, you. Shoo, shoo. But yes, I loved this. Emma gave CR, the Duke, the Laird of the clan. She gave him a new perspective on life and helped him open his eyes and see things differently. He's been crushing on her for a long time, but he thought his friend wouldn't ever allow her to be his wife and all those kinds of things. It's beautiful. I love this with so much of my being. It's not even funny. And I can't believe how many 5-star reads I've had this week. I had like 4. It's crazy. Because the other 5-star read I had was Bewitching by Jill Barnett. I buddy read this with Jen over at the Book Refuge. We both just blew through this yesterday, Sunday. And this was the perfect example of a grumpy hero and a sunshine heroine. This was such a fun look at what a historical romance could be. It does have a little bit of a paranormal element, as she is a witch. She does magic. She's a little clumsy about it, but it's absolutely adorable. So we have Joyous, and Joyous wants to be independent and go out on her own, but she has a protective aunt who's like, no, you're not ready. And anyway, she proves herself worthy. She casts this travel spell and ends up in the lap of one of the most eligible bachelors in London. And he had been courting someone, and she had kind of called it off. And so he ends up marrying her instead. And it's really cute. I really loved this. And it's kind of a lot like Any Rogue Will Do in that aspect. But this had me in stitches. I was laughing so hard. There's even a whole like period of time with like an enchanted inn. And that was really funny. Like, the amount of laughing that I did is unreal. And like there was commentary on romance novels. Where's that one page? I want to show you guys because it's not a spoiler to show you this page. So it says chapter 13, at the request of Neil, Viscount Seymour, chapter 13 has been omitted. Bad luck, you know. And that's the entire chapter. Like, that's the kind of humor that you're dealing with in this novel. And she warns him that she's a witch before they get married. Because they do get married very early on, so it's mostly them dealing with them being married. But he doesn't believe her. He thinks she's superstitious. But before they consummate the marriage, she shows him the magic and makes sure that he knows, before they consummate it, that she is a witch. He's entering this knowing full well what's going on. And so it takes them a while before they consummate things, and it's cute. It's really well done. His way of protecting her is a little overbearing, but I do really enjoy this. I had a great time. 5 stars. Definitely going to be looking at more Jill Barnett. All right, we've got 3 more. So we've got Homey Today by Maria Louise. I received this in my reveal book box. And in this one, we're dealing with childhood friends. He has been on a reality TV show. It didn't go well. He wasn't feeling it. It was like a Bachelorette-style show. And he wasn't feeling it. So he made sure that the woman on the show knew to tell him no on screen, because neither of them were feeling it and things like that. And the producers were supposed to warn her so that it made her look good, but they didn't. And so it ended up causing a scandal, and he needs to stay away from all of it. He ends up with an opportunity to fake date his little sister's best friend because she needs contract work done for her salon. She had somebody that she paid and they took off without actually doing the work, kind of a situation. But that's what he does for a living. So he's going to come in and do the work in exchange for, you know, the cost of supplies and for her to fake date him. And so it's their romance. And I really loved this. And it was a good time. My hairdresser heart really enjoyed the renovation process of this one, and it was a really, really good time. And I really liked their dynamic, and they didn't ender things, you know, lightly. They both were weighing things from very early on, and I really enjoyed it. Highly recommend checking this one out if you haven't. I gave that one a solid 4, by the way. Next, we have Follow Me Darkly by Helen Hart. This is a dark romance in which we're dealing with a woman who works for an heiress as her kind of social media manager and photographer, and helps her manage things. She's like her personal assistant. All of a sudden, this gorgeous man named Braden walks into the office. He has history with her employer, Addie, and, you know, it's just not ever, like, delved into. And anyways, Braden is immediately smitten with Sky. Her name's Sky. So he's immediately smitten with Sky, asks her out, and they start going on dates, and he has some very dark tastes, and he's very forceful. So this is not going to be a book for everybody. It doesn't really go too much into his dark tastes, like, in the bedroom yet, but this is book 1 in a series, and the way Helen Hart seems to write, she seems to write them in trilogies, and there was a lot of ground covered. So this is like kind of an intro to baby BDSM kind of stuff. I do think it's going to turn much darker in the subsequent books. So yes, if you are entertaining the idea of a darker romance with some BDSM elements to it, this might be a good, like, first step for you, because I feel like it's not the darkest or the most BDSM book I've ever read, but if you've not ever experienced it and you're not sure you're going to like it, this would be a good place to start. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Helen Hart's books always deal with very deep topics, and they can be triggering, so do make sure you look up a list of triggers and go from there when it comes to anything that this author writes. But I did enjoy it, 4 stars. I did receive an extra copy in my reveal book box that I just unboxed, but I do have a friend that's already spoken for that, so that's going to be sent on to her. But yes, so this copy, because I kept the one from the reveal book box because it's signed, and then I'm going to send the original copy I had on to my friend. So anyways, if this sounds interesting to you, it's worth a pickup. If not, you're okay to pass on it, I think. And then last but not least is my least favorite read from this week, and that is Woven in Moonlight by Isabel Ibanez, which I'm really sad that this is my least favorite. I really wanted to love this. We're dealing with, I don't remember the kind of lore that we're dealing with, Bolivian. And I hadn't ever read anything with Bolivian, like, lore and culture in it. And I really wanted to love this, but I had a hard time connecting to the story being told. I don't know if it's because we broke it up and buddy read it. This was a buddy read with Lindsay, but I just had the hardest time connecting with this book. And it was fine. If it sounds interesting to you, I do think it's worth a pickup, because it may very well just be a Shayla error on this one. Lindsay had a hard time connecting with it too, but Lindsay and I have very similar reading tastes, especially when it comes to our YA picks, and this one we just didn't click with. And I don't think it's necessarily anything to do with the culture. I do think it has to do with the way of storytelling. This felt kind of meandering, a little hard for me to follow, and it just wasn't my thing. The writing wasn't necessarily bad, it just wasn't one where I connected with it. So just like with all authors, like, I just didn't connect with this author, and I'm really sad I didn't, because I really wanted to. I was so excited about reading this, and I really just was so sad that I didn't connect with it. So friends, that is everything for this video. I know it's long. I hope you guys continue to enjoy the length of these, because I'm enjoying just kind of deep diving these books with you guys and having an opportunity to really break down what I loved or what I didn't like about books. I don't try to talk a lot about negative things, and you guys know that, so I don't tend to dwell on the ones I don't like as much. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've read any of these, let me know in the comments down below, and I love you all so much. I will see you in the next one. Bye.